Hi everyone. Today we'll cover SAP HANA architecture. In this we'll cover three topics. The first one is in-memory database. The second one will be columnar data storage in SAP S4 HANA. And the third one is parallel processing. These topics will help us understand why SAP S4 HANA is much faster compared to legacy SAP ECC. So in-memory database. So let's try to understand through normal processing what happens. So in any normal operations in a computer or laptop, three things are involved. The first one is processor, the second is main memory, which is nothing but the RAM, and the third one is auxiliary memory, which is nothing but the hard disk. Now any operations between the processor and the main memory is typically very fast. Operations between the main memory and auxiliary memory is very slow. And what is done SAP S4 HANA is the use of auxiliary memory is to the minimal. It's only used for, let's say, as a backup operation, that if the power is lost or in case of some disasters, the database needs to be saved, right? So that's where auxiliary memory comes into the picture. But most of the operations data is residing in the main memory itself. That is nothing but the RAM. So in SAP S4 HANA, all data is available in main memory, which avoids the performance issues of disk I/O. Disk or solid state drives are still required for permanent persistency in the event of power failure or some other catastrophe. But this does not slow down the performance because the required backup or operations to the disk can take place asynchronously as a background task. In the columnar data storage, how it is done is let's try to understand through a table. So a database table, SAP is nothing but a two-dimensional data structure. So let's take one example of a database table which has three columns. The first one country, the second one products, the third one unit sold. Now, if it is a row-oriented database, typically how it will be stored is like each row entries will be stored together on the disk. Whereas in columnar database, all the values of the column will be stored together on the disk. So we'll cover how it will be useful in terms of aggregations or the select query, how it will be helpful in the faster processing. But just remember this thing that in columnar database structure, all the values of a column, let's say a country, right? So these are the values in the country US, UK, Australia. All the values will be stored together on the disk. Whereas in case of row-oriented database, all values correspond to each row will be stored together on the disk. As explained in the last slide, this is how a row store database will look like, where all the values corresponding to each row will be stored together in the hard disk. So row 1 with the country US, product 1, number of units sold 1000 will be stored together in the hard disk. The data corresponding to row 2, 3, 4 similarly will be stored together with the data corresponding to each row being stored together. Whereas in case of columnar store, the values corresponding to each column will be stored together. So in this case, the countries' values are US, UK, and Australia in the table entries. So all the unique values will be stored together. So if you see it carefully, In Columnar store, it can let you save the data with compressed values also. So you don't need to save the same values of the country again and again. You can only save the unique values of a typical column value. So in this case, country, if let's say there are 10 unique values in the country, you can only store 10 values of that country column. Whereas that is not the case in row store, right? So you really need to store each row values, irrespective of whether a value in a particular column is uh, repeated or not. So that is one advantage of the columnar store. So as I have written, a row-oriented organization stores a table as a sequence of records. In a columnar storage, the entries of a column are stored in contiguous memory locations. SAP S4 HANA actually supports both, uh, but it is useful to use columnar store order storage where you need to scan or do aggregation of certain tables. Uh, in that case, using column storage is pretty useful. Now, coming to the third topic, parallel processing. In S4, SAP S4 HANA, it runs on multi-core CPUs with fast communication between process cores. So if you see this example, different columns, the the operations can be done using different cores. That is nothing but CPUs. So if you see the processing of column A is being done by core 1 and simultaneously the operations is being done in column B using code 2. And not only that, so let's say there is a third column, column C. Some of the operations in column C can be done by third core, core 3, and some of the operations of, let's say, some values of that column can be done by core 4 simultaneously. So this is an advantage of SAP HANA where it lets you run multi-core CPUs at the same time. So in a column store, data is already vertically partitioned, uh, which I had explained in the last slide. So that means the operations on different columns can easily be processed in parallel. So this is another advantage of SAP S4 HANA. So three advantages of SAP S4 HANA architecture. The first one which we covered was in-memory computing or database. The second one which we covered is the columnar data storage. And the third one which we covered is the parallel processing in SAP S4 HANA. So these three features in SAP S4 HANA is pretty useful in terms of faster processing compared to legacy SAP ECC tools. So let me know if you have any questions, or let me know in the comment sections. I'll be happy to reply. Thank you so much for joining.